He's not from around here.
Are you new in town?
Yeah.
He's come a long way.
Hold on!
You like living dangerously, don't you?
Now, he's going to do to them
Who are you?
what they did to him. Charlie Sheen in The Wraith, rated PG-13.
Now showing at select theaters. Check newspaper for showtimes.
Prime 1986.
Yeah.
In all its curious glory.
All right, well, let's get into it. It is a brand new episode of ReconCinemation. I'm your host, John Diner.
I'm David Munchak.
I'm Brent Hutchins.
And this is the podcast that takes a look back at some of our favorite films from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And my God, this is another special episode. We've got a returning guest, one of our favorites, Blake Fischera from Scored to Death. How's it going, Blake?
It's well, and even better by the fact that we're talking about the Wraith tonight.
That's right.
Are you excited?
Sure, of course, always excited. Excited to see all of you guys, and excited to talk about a movie that I hadn't seen in a really long time. That always had a special place in my heart. So.
We're always psyched to have you back on the show. It's some of our favorite episodes. We get the most comments on the ones you pop on for, and the Wraith is a very special movie that we're going to get into. There's a lot happening in this movie, but Blake, tell us before we get into it, what's happening with all things Scored to Death?
Well, we're working on Scored to Death, The Dark Art of Scary Movie Music, which is a documentary that I wouldn't say is based on the books, but is kind of a companion to the books. And in kind of collaboration with that, in conjunction with that, producing a Scored to Death record, an album, music album, which is a compilation of horror movie themes, covers of great, fantastic lineup of musicians have gotten together to support the movie by covering horror movie themes and allowing me to release it. And we originally, presented it as part of the Kickstarter campaign, which was helpful, but we're going to have a ton of leftovers. So I will at some point figure out a way to make them available to more people. And just like the Kickstarter campaign, all kind of the proceeds from the album will go towards the making of the documentary. Other than that, I'm still doing, although I'm working on my first episode of 2023 for Scored to Death Radio, which is a podcast I do at Cinematic Sound Radio Network. And because basically I've been doing nothing but horror movie music themed stuff for the last decade, I'm branching out and I'm doing a couple of episodes on like movie theme songs from the 70s and 80s. So we're going to be listening to there's actually going to be 2 episodes because I just couldn't pare down the list. The intent was to do just all stuff that was really rare and weird, but
yeah,
you gotta throw stuff like Fame and Flashdance in there. I mean,
absolutely.
Some Stan Bush has got to make it into the
Stan Bush, who has a song in the Wraith soundtrack.
So that's what I'm working on now. Not sure when those are going to drop, but that's what I'm working on in podcast land. And every once in a while, Dion and I still get together to do something for Saturday night movie sleepovers. And we're actually working on an episode proper that we might be recording in a week or so from when we're recording this right now.
Nice. Ooh. Awesome. That's so the composers that you interviewed for the books, both volumes, are there new composers for the documentary, or is it a mix of people from those books?
It's kind of a mix of some people from the books and some new people. I started writing the first book at the end of 2013. So, I mean, it really has been a decade that I've been kind of working on this. Just shy of that by December ish will be a decade. And then I started doing the podcast, and then from the podcast, kind of not the podcast I just spoke about Saturday night, not Score to Death Radio, but a podcast called Score to Death the Podcast, where I interviewed composers. That kind of came after that, after the first book, and then the second book, oddly enough, kind of sprouted more from the podcast than from the original book. But you know, the all the time working on all those books and the 2 books and the podcast, like so many more composers have kind of stepped up to the forefront of composing, and thankfully and kind of awesomely, more women, more people of color, stuff like that. So that's getting, you know, it's going to be a really cool mix of like the classic guys like Harry Manfredini and Charles Bernstein and all those guys, and then some new people. Like I just recently interviewed Robert Ikai Aubrey Lowe, who did the remake of Candyman.
Oh, nice.
The score for that. He's a Brooklyn guy, so it was a lot easier for me to go to do that one here in New York. But we're also going to try to interview a few other people, like maybe a neuroscientist about how music works and horror works in the brain, and you know, like a film music historian. Not trying to keep the cast list relatively small,
right?
But the concept of the documentary is going to be more focusing specifically on how music works in horror movies, as opposed to like a history of it, or just like biographies of composers and how they. So it's going to really focus on how music works, and so it's all about like finding the right people to talk to.
Yeah.
To talk about that subject, while also casting like a really wide net for a diverse talent, so to get a whole bunch of different points of view on it.
That's I've never heard of anybody talking about the science of what that music triggers, you know, how that you respond to it kind of psychologically. That's amazing. I can't wait to hear it.
Yeah, I think we have to find the right. I haven't found the neuroscientist or somebody like that yet.
Yeah,
I did find a guy in California who I'm hoping to interview next time I'm in town, he's a scientist who works with marmots, and he discovered picking up a baby marmot that it like screamed, and because it was scared, and he had such an emotional reaction to it, he became very fascinated by the idea of like the sound that animals make when they're scared and how they're pretty common. And then I don't know why yet, because I didn't interview him, but then he took those sounds, like the waveforms of those sounds that he recorded, and compared them to movie soundtracks, not just the music, but the overall. And they found like a ton of similarities with horror movie soundtracks about like in nature, in nature, the sounds that people make and animals make when they're distressed and scared, and just the way sound works in horror movies. So we're going to talk to him about that as well.
Nice.
You're going to have to find the consultants from Dreamscape and see what they're up to.
Now, I don't know anything about composing and horror music. There's a lot of horror movie music sound like a lot of people emptying their bowels out of fright. Is it a lot of like slooshing, splashing noises?
Yeah, the beautiful thing about horror movie scores is that anything can be music, and so there are definitely scores that you could probably argue sound like that. Yes.
Oh my gosh. Okay. See. All right.
All right. David's in. He's in now.
I understand it. Now that it's been explained.
That's super exciting. So we'll make sure to let everybody know here as that's getting ready to drop.
We're still at the beginning of shooting. So it's going to be a while.
We're tracking it though. We're going to track it here.
Yeah, we've got a 50-year lease on this on this building, so we're going to be here.
Yeah,
take your time.
Oh boy! All right. Well, let's switch gears to the reason why we're here tonight, and it's to talk about The Wraith, the 1986 Charlie Sheen starring film. Why on earth did we pick this one, guys? Was it me again?
Well, I think it was you and I, John. I I don't know, David, if you'd seen this when you were younger, but I know John and I both had, and we like to joke about this movie sometimes while fooling around. And I think we decided that it was time. It was time to really settle down and take a deeper look at it.
Let's get that inside joke. Let's just show it to its completion.
We'll get there. It's going to be slow burn this time.
Well, yeah, this was a movie. The Wraith is a movie that, I don't know, if you grew up in the 80s, it was on your radar. You know, it was something that everybody had seen. It was a strange movie. It was like the first cult movie that I knew about. That was not, wasn't a huge blockbuster. It wasn't, I don't think it was like massive on rentals or anything, but everybody knew about it. So it was, it's been on the list for a long time. So I felt like,
for me, it's kind of different because I felt like I was the only person on the planet who had seen it until college, probably, when I ran into other like-minded folks who were there to make movies. And they were like, oh yeah, The Wraith. And I was like, what? You know about this movie?
Well, and we're big fans of The Machine here. So, it was time to get him back on the show. So
is this the level of cults there? Like there's midnight showings and people coming in costume and throwing props from the movie at the screen. Is it that kind of cult status? Or
I don't. What props would you throw? Like the
metal arm braces?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think it would just be a lot of medical equipment.
That doesn't make sense at all. But
yeah.
Anytime anybody's walking around confused, not knowing what's going on, I think that's probably a play on the cult following of the Wraith.
Yeah. All right, well, let's go back in time to November 1986. Brent, what's happening in the world in November 86?
Yeah, let's see. So fall 86. The biggest news internationally is that Reagan had confessed to selling weapons to Iran, which was a big deal back then. I remember that being on the news quite a bit. Oliver North and all that hoopla. And so that was going on. There was also a lot happening in the streets with the gangs. So Run DMC was making, that rap group was kind of pleading with the gangs of LA to chill out and have like an organized peace day where they put down their weapons and didn't fight for just a day they were asking for. So it was pretty bad. I do remember a lot of the movies coming out right around then and after then were all very like gang related and kind of street thug life sort of themed. So that was happening. The Beastie Boys released their album License to Ill, which was the first rap album to ever hit the number one spot on the Billboard list.
And still amazing.
Also the first rap album I ever had, and would recite "Fight for Your Right" constantly.
Yeah. Yep.
Let's see what else was happening. Mike Tyson was the youngest champion in boxing history. He won the championship in November.
He won in 86.
Yeah, he won in 86. Yep.
I thought it was later.
For the first time he was 20 years old when he won it, which is I don't know if it still stands as the record, but I have to imagine it could be.
And when did Punch Out come out?
That was my next question.
Right. Right afterwards.
It had to be it
feels like right around then. But
now,
let's see it.
Who beat Mike Tyson's Punch Out here? Who beat it?
Who beat it?
But yeah. Blake beat it.
Yeah, you had to. It was hard work, but
it was. Yeah, Glass Joe, right? Glass
Joe.
Yeah,
Soda
Bowl.
What was Soda Popinski?
Soda Popinski, classic.
Yeah.
Then some other unfortunate ones, right?
Yeah,
like Mystic Tiger or something like that.
Yeah, probably some racially insensitive ones.
What was the hippo guy? That was.
Oh God, yeah.
King Hippo. Was that
King Hippo?
King Hippo. Yeah, absolutely. That was a big game, but that must have come a little later because he didn't win until that year. So
Punching
yeah,
out yet.
Yeah.
punching folks out. But he won in the second round, which, as anybody who grew up around that time and watched any of his fights, was a long fight for him. And as his legend grew, and the more fights he got into, they were seconds long sometimes. So, and then the biggest news, I mean, at least for me that I remember from '86, and this happened earlier in the year, but being from Houston, was the Challenger explosion that happened earlier that year in January. And so that was kind of one of those things that I think, everybody felt the effects of that. But growing up in Houston, having family that worked at NASA, it was certainly a big deal around my neighborhood. So, but yeah, '86 and many other things happened that year. But that's the
Big
recap I'm going to give.
Happened.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
true.
Yeah.
Also,
that was the biggest thing of the year, really.
Yeah, Platoon released in December of '86, which also stars Charlie Sheen.
Yeah, well, it has obviously a tie-in and a link here, and effect to what was happening on this movie. But
yeah, which we'll get into. But yeah, it released in December of '86 and won the Academy Award in '87.
Yep, won Best Picture. Yep.
So, yeah.
Nice. All right, David, give us the quick plot rundown. What's happening in The Wraith for anyone listening who either hasn't seen it or hasn't seen it in 30 years? One or the other. So
the Wraith it focuses on a small town Arizona youth in the 1980s, a group of thuggish street racers, who also commit a bunch of crimes. They're basically just the local gang. They are kind of like the focus of the movie, right? And also of local law enforcement.
Yes.
Throughout and they are challenged by a mysterious youth who comes to town and also romances local youth Carrie Johnson, who has ties to the gang and familial ties and friends. And it doesn't take long for all those bad boys to find themselves up against an angry spirit who is focused on maybe ending all their lives.
One would say a wraith, possibly.
A wraith, an angry ghost.
All right.
Spirit of vengeance.
So thank you, David. Thank you, Brent. What was the first time we saw this movie? Blake, when did you see it in the theater? Did you see it on HBO, or did you rent it?
Did anybody see it in the theater? That's the question.
The answer is no.
I have yet to find somebody who's seen it in the theater. I was more along the lines of it was, I didn't know that there was a following for this movie at all. It's going back to the earlier discussion.
Yeah.
There was this kid that lived across the street from me, named John Turner. Shout out to John Turner, who ended up moving away at some point. So I haven't seen him in forever. He was like a year or two younger than me.
Mm-hmm.
And, but we used to hang out, and I feel like he and his family either rented it or they had it taped off of something. And there was some kind of get together going on somewhere, I think at my house, with the parents and whatnot. And so we kind of went and did our own thing. We went to John's house and we watched it. And so it's always kind of it's linked to that living room for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Living room that I literally haven't seen or been in, and probably doesn't even exist anymore. But
do you get a whole sensory thing when you watch it? You can smell the where you were.
But that was probably 1990, 91.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And then I probably didn't see it again until college. And then I probably watched it one time since then. But definitely not in the last 10 years for sure.
Yeah.
But it's always been a movie that stuck with me because it was one of those things nobody, I didn't know anybody else who had seen it other than this guy John Turner for the
Yeah.
longest time.
Yeah. It was like when you found those people who knew about it.
It was like
It's
a
kind of
secret.
like Werewolf that we talked about. When you find
Yeah.
somebody that knows Werewolf, it's like, finally.
And for some reason, and there's no absolutely, maybe it's the same company or the same composer, but for some reason, it's very tightly linked with The Gate in my head, even though I definitely did not see them at the same time. I saw The Gate before that, but they're probably around the same year.
Oh yeah.
And for some reason, maybe I bought them on like cheap DVD at Best Buy at the same time, and that's why
I can see this as a 2-pack.
I could definitely see it. Yep, double feature.
So for some reason, it's linked to The Gate.
Nice.
I don't know. I'm not sure why, but it is.
I loved The Gate as a kid. I think
So
it did come out right around this time.
Well, I think The Gate is another movie that, I mean, one of the questions that that will be posed on this podcast about, like, if you didn't grow up in the 80s, can you like identify with this movie?
Yeah.
I think The Gate is definitely like, you have to have seen The Gate at a certain age in the 80s for it to like be burned onto your soul in a very loving way.
Even the Goonies is like that, though. You know, I mean, Goonies it goes a little further, but I find a lot of people that if you didn't see it when you were a kid in the 80s, it doesn't resonate nearly as much. Like, there are people who see it now and kids, you know, like it, but it's just not quite the same.
Yeah. Well, the bizarre thing about The Gate is that it was a horror movie made for children.
Yeah.
And it's truly disturbing.
Yeah. I probably haven't seen it for 35 years.
Yeah.
But
I haven't seen it since then.
I'll tell you one thing. The effects still hold up. Like, all
do they?
The forced perspective and stop animation, all this stuff still looks really great.
Nice.
It's kind of an unsung hero in that field.
I'm gonna have to dig that up and
we're gonna have to. That's going on the list now.
Yeah,
that's
for sure.
2024. Here we go. Okay.
Yeah, put it on.
Awesome. But Brent, what about you? When did you first see the Wraith?
You know, I just to go back to whether or not I feel like I always thought that this was a direct-to-video movie. Like, I didn't even know that it released in the theaters at all. And it wasn't until we were talking about it a few weeks ago where you told me that it did actually release in the theaters that I gained that knowledge. But I must have seen it right when it came out on video. I remember I was homesick from school, and my when I would be homesick from school, my mom would go and like rent videos for me and, you know, get me like a comic book, and you know, so I'd feel better, which ultimately just really led to a lot of days of me playing hooky. But nonetheless, she rented this movie, and it was a new release when she rented it, I'm sure. And so I watched it homesick one day and have no idea why she rented it. I was completely confused. I don't know, you know.
Well, look at the poster.
I was like, yeah, exactly. I mean, the poster, yeah. She must have just seen the box art and been like, yeah, he'll love this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I had no idea what was going on in this movie at that age. I didn't even know what a Wraith was. So it was an interesting view. And I think that's probably the only time I had seen it, but it always stuck in my head because it was such just a random movie. And for me, like, it was so random and weird. And, you know, Charlie Sheen wasn't exactly a household name at the point in which this came out, but he
was on the brink.
Like, he quickly became super recognizable pretty fast after this. And so I just always remembered, like, oh yeah, it's that weird movie that has that guy from Major League and you know, and so and really, it wasn't until college, I think, until I met another person who even knew what I was talking about when I would joke about it or talk about it. So I found my people, and here we are.
David, let me guess. First time watch?
First time for me is just this week. I don't even know if I had much of an awareness of it. So, you know, I would avoid sort of these, you know, I avoided low budget kind of things in the 80s, and this looked kind of that, and it didn't really have the appeal as far as the box art. I don't know. It's just a weird looking
That poster
movie.
didn't attract you to it? Come on.
Didn't really work. So I didn't have that, that one person to bring me in and say, hey, join the club. So, best wishes to John Turner, or R.I.P. to John Turner for all we know. But thank goodness he was there for it. So yeah,
to the club, man.
Yeah. So now
You're in.
Now I feel like I'm a special part of it now that I got to see it for
Yeah,
this podcast.
You're a member of a select few.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, the interesting thing about the cult sort of factor of this movie is it's not like we just covered Evil Dead 2 a couple of episodes back. So check that out in the archives at ReconCinemation.com. Evil Dead in the late 90s got this resurgence started building, and that was a movie, at least the first two were kind of forgotten, except for kind of pure horror fans. But it until it got those re-releases on DVD, or those releases on DVD and VHS in the late 90s, it didn't really start to build for that one. The Wraith, on the other hand, never really got like a major upturn in the cult factor. It just kind of stayed in this, like you had to have seen it or you've been talking about it. There's no real movement. But yeah,
it's interesting that we kind of classify this as a cult movie, because I feel like it doesn't necessarily have a following the same way that other cult movies do that I think of. But I will say that anytime I run into somebody who has seen it, I feel, having just joked about it, I feel like we are part of an exclusive club of people, of not many, who have seen it and understand and have gone through the ride with us. And so there is like kind of a kinship there that for others that I run into that have seen it. But I don't know, is that a cult? Is that cultish? Does that make it a cult movie?
A small size cult.
Well, I don't know, if you read stuff or read interviews or you watch like special features on the Blu-ray or whatever, the people who are interviewed about it, who were involved, talk about how they had no idea that there's this cult following for it. And they talk about how there are like Facebook groups, and
are there really?
Like there's people that are like are building the car. And
yeah,
wow.
Like the guy who was in charge, he didn't build the car because the car was actually a car, but I guess maybe the guy that built the replicas of the car for the film, like he was talking about that, he got a message on Facebook from someone who had all these questions about the car because he was trying to build one. So I mean, I think, yeah, is the following as big as something like Evil Dead? Yeah, probably not, but I think it's probably a lot bigger than we realize. There was something that happened in the late 90s going into the early 2000s where the internet became much more available, and home media became, not just like the big studios releasing stuff or the people that are just doing like straight to video new releases, but was this big resurgence of, Anchor Bay releasing like Mario Bava and Dario Argento movies and cult horror movies that hadn't really seen the light of day in a long time. Once all that started, and then message boards started, and then especially when social media as we know it came like later, like nothing is truly obscure anymore. Like very few things. And like and podcasts are a perfect example. Like we all found each other, and we all, like everybody who loves these things kind of found each other, and it's created this community, and it's kind of awesome, but it also has taken away a lot of the kind of mystique and magic of finding something like Wraith and not knowing anything about it. Like, yeah, Evil Dead might have had a resurgence because then Alright Darkness came out, but it wasn't until Anchor Bay released like 27 different versions of it over a 10-year period.
Oh my God, so many.
That it became like really this like huge phenomenon. Of course, the people that loved it, and that we supported, like Briscoe County Jr. and all the things that Bruce Campbell was doing, and Darkman, like the people that loved it. And, video stores made it possible for us to rent things over and over again, or discover things that we didn't get to see in the theater or never came to the theater. as well as cable television did kind of that same thing. But all that cult following, like love for these kinds of things, got like a shot of adrenaline going into the early 2000s. And so I think, like, you know, in a lot of ways, the people that do these kinds of podcasts or Saturday night movie sleepovers, in a lot of ways, that we're kind of like stuck and in our teenage years, at least I
Yeah.
it's it's hard to kind of like imagine like a world where Wraith has like a substantial enough audience for someone to release like a special edition Blu-ray on it. Like they weren't doing it for the four of us, you know.
And that Blu-ray has like there's a lot of, you know, extra features and interviews and everything,
commentaries.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well,
like
like Charlie
multiple.
Charlie Sheen became a superstar as well, right? So I mean, I think that probably fed into a resurgence as people probably went back to older movies in his career and started looking at things.
I think also, you know, with like Blake, kind of like what you were saying, with the rise of the internet, it gave a forum for people from our era to go back. And what was that weird movie that, like, I don't remember it. I remember like a part of it. Like we talked about on Evil Dead, how that shot, you know, the shot at the end of Evil Dead 1, that big zoom in, was like in my brain from when I was 5, but I had no idea what that was from until I saw the movie in college, and then it hit me like, oh, now it all comes together. But this was another movie. Like, what was that Charlie Sheen movie? He's like on a motorcycle and a car, and so now you can figure out what it was. Like,
yeah, and
another one
became available.
Yeah,
in a way there was
like
things very quickly. Things became like at our fingertips, like kind of literally. I went to college and film school right outside of New York City, and so just like coming into the city and going to video stores here, ones that sold movies or ones that rented movies, even that was like a huge eye opener. I was just talking to somebody about Zombie because they showed it on Joe Bob Briggs' last drive-in last night, and I was telling them about, like, I had this book in the 90s that was about Quentin Tarantino, because that's when Quentin Tarantino hit the scene, and we all fucking loved Quentin Tarantino at that time, and many people still do. But I had this book where it was like excerpts of interviews where he talked about other movies. So it wasn't really about him. It was about other movies. And there was this whole chapter about Italian movies, and so that's how I learned about who Dario Argento was and who Lucio Fulci was. And years before I ever found any of their movies, I was like, there's some movie out there where a zombie wrestles a shark. And it wasn't until I found it in like Record Explosion on 34th Street across the street from Macy's, where it was freshly released from Anchor Bay in a nice clamshell and widescreen, when I was like, this is that movie. This is that movie. And so that was like 1998, 99, 98. So it just the landscape changed really quickly. And I'm not saying that Wraith went the way of that in terms of popularity, but it's certainly that kind of like steroid, you know, in syringe of you know, that jump started the physical media collecting and all that stuff. Certainly benefited Wraith, I think, a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah. I saw this, it had to be 87, 88, somewhere as soon as it hit HBO or whatever. I don't know if it was specifically HBO, but one of those movie channels. I remember watching it before school like multiple times. It was like a 6:30 a.m. movie that I was watching.
Oh my God.
Eating breakfast, watching The Wraith. I don't know why, but then it was, like, as you know, it would come up in conversations with a couple of my friends, and same thing, like they saw it before school and everybody was passionate about it and loved it, and then no one talked about it for 30 years. So
well, it has a lot to remember. You know, there's like interesting imagery. There's a cool car.
Yeah,
I mean, it's cool.
It is.
Yeah, the car's cool.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's a cool movie.
It's
And
like
so-
it's the 80s. It's got a car, it's got a motorcycle. Charlie Sheen was at his peak. You
Got
know,
Sherilyn
there's
Fenn in
action. Sherilyn Fenn,
Sherilyn
forget about
Fenn.
it.
there's just a lot there's a lot to remember about it. There's a lot
Yeah,
of things to kind of like find our way into the wrinkles of our brains and stay there.
yeah.
But yeah, and it was weird. And it was weird. And those are the kinds of things that kind of stick with you, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's part of what I mean, I guess that's sort of one of the things about this movie is that it's a lot, you know, doesn't necessarily work in this movie or make sense, but it's that all adds up to the weirdness level of it. But it's that weirdness that makes it memorable, that sticks with you. That like, would it, if it wasn't so weird, would it have had any kind of shelf life? Probably not. It would have been like, you know, a lot of other movies at the time. It's, you know, and it is derivative of like many movies to the point where it doesn't quite know what it is anymore. That it's going in a lot of different directions, all of which are fine, but it doesn't ever pick one.
Yeah. Well, you know, it also, you know, I think, you know, the way that I don't know what younger people are into these days, but
Not the Wraith,
you know,
for sure.
obviously there's a huge 80s resurgence that's just like hanging on for dear life and won't be, it's not being let go of.
Yeah.
But you got to imagine in the 80s, that was happening about the 50s for us,
Right.
late 70s into the 80s.
Sure.
All those filmmakers and stuff who grew up in the 50s were making remakes of The Thing and The Blob. And
Yep.
we got Grease and, you know, we had Happy Days in the late 70s. And, you know, it's so in a way, it's like this weird time capsule of the 80s because it's so 80s, but it's also so 50s.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it was like an 80s representation of the 50s. So it's a really interesting movie in that it's like this weird parallel universe kind of thing. Like that's not a real place in Tucson. Like,
Right.
people don't actually do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, she lives in like this beautiful like suburban neighborhood, and when she's like the first guy that dies, she's like, but he lives like a block like up the street from me. I was like, these like maniac gang members live in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
Right. This dude who's drinking like hydraulic fluid.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, and that's one of the things that stuck with me the most. I'm like, I think about Charlie Sheen. I think about the poster and the guy who drinks all the weird fluids.
Skank, the guy who just can't keep from drinking automobile fluids, whatever they might be.
Like so gross. That was probably
big. That was big in the 80s though. You know, over the top. You got that guy that drinks motor oil.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true. Oh, the 80s.
It's probably
I'm
because
pretty
I was
sure
eating breakfast while I was watching it that grossed me out so much.
Yeah. Yeah. At one point, I'm positive whatever he was drinking was like Dimetap cough syrup in a milk jug.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody's going to know this, but I tried to look it up and I couldn't figure it out. But that house that Sherilyn Fenn lived at reminded me an awful lot of the house that Patrick Dempsey's love interest in Can't Buy Me Love lived at. And I'm almost positive it's the same place, but I couldn't confirm.
Yeah, I wonder. I don't know if Can't Buy Me Love shot in Tucson.
Yeah, I don't know.
But
yeah, there's some movie. Maybe you'd be surprised though, because one of them, like maybe it's 3 o'clock high. That's shot someplace like Arizona, like some weird.
Yeah.
At least you're like, why would they shoot that at
high
school? Like,
there was Arizona was a weirdly popular place to shoot, but very randomly for I know a lot of people who, you know, older, more veterans in the industry who all like, you know, they got in the DGA on movies of the week that all shot in Arizona and, you know, that kind of stuff. So,
must have been some kind of tax credits or something.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah. But yeah, this movie is like such a mixture of, it's kind of like Mad Max for teens a little bit.
Sure.
You've got a little of that. You've got, Knight Rider elements happening. You've got a little High Plains Drifter. There's a lot of
It's Mad Max meets American Graffiti. Like
there you go. Yeah, yeah. Like even like I would say a little Karate Kid, in there.
Well, it's going kind of what I was saying before. It's like its own kind of world. So it does have, in a lot of ways, even though it is very 80s and the music, the soundtrack and everything. In some ways it's very timeless in a weird way. The cars they're classic cars then, a lot of them anyway.
Yeah.
And then you have this futuristic car, and teens or whoever old they're supposed to be, that's just
the oldest teens in Hollywood.
Yeah.
But they're universally
Yep.
teens. Like they go to it's Arizona, so they go to the one place where there's water to hang out.
Yeah.
And they hang out at the drive-in,
and the burger, what's the name of
the hangout at Arnold's?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
That burger joint is the hottest place, the hippest place in town.
Oh yeah.
Everybody either works there or is hanging out.
It's called Big K's or
Big K's. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the plot of this movie is not. The plot's pretty straightforward. It's more of the style in which the movie is done that, starts to really like shift gears, pun intended. But it's this ghost, or is it a ghost? Is it an alien? Is it a specter? It's a wraith, but
Man.
who comes back to avenge his own death at the hands of this gang led by Nick Cassavetes.
I think it's definitely avenge his own death, but like make sure that the people he loved, who he had left behind, were okay with this crazy gang that was, still wreaking havoc in his absence.
Yeah. And, starring Charlie Sheen, who has the least amount of screen time in this movie.
Yeah.
Starring is a loose word.
Yeah. I was watching it, and literally I was thinking to myself, where is Charlie Sheen? Like, we haven't seen him for, I think, maybe, except just for really quickly up at the front, he was missing for 45 minutes, maybe.
Really long stretches without him. And I mean, it really does feel, watching it this time, I did feel like it was really about this gang more than the Wraith. And the Wraith is the supporting character that is driving the story.
All the bad guys are the protagonists of the movie.
Yeah. I mean, you see Nick Cassavetes with all sorts of emotions here. He's, we start and he's basically a rapist in the beginning of the movie, to violent, and then we get tears, emotional, sadness from him later on.
Yeah, I don't understand this city at all. Like, are there not restraining orders? Like, why is Carrie why is Carrie in this situation where, Packard just shows up and she has no ability to get away from him?
Well, he's bullying her into, because they're not dating, right? Like, they're
according to her, but according to him, they are. He's like kidnapped her and brainwashed her. She's got what's the syndrome? I forget now.
Got Stockholm syndrome.
Stockholm. Thank you. Yes.
There you go.
Except it's just like it's like the opposite of that, actually.
Yeah, except she doesn't. Yeah, she doesn't like him at all. She thinks he's grotesque.
She keeps telling him, "I don't like you."
She kind of
She's
does.
like always around him.
She's not doing anything to lead him on, but she doesn't put up a fight. Like, she does.
Well, she's afraid, right?
She's afraid. I mean, she sees what he does, right? Like, he's.
Although apparently there's this revelation that she didn't know that he was the one that killed.
Oh yeah, because she got knocked out. There's this one
but
throwaway
she
line.
Says in the end, like she did know, right?
Well, I think she suspected. I mean, because when in the flashback scene where you see them burst into the room, and when they're Jamie and her are having sex, like you see one of them like grabs her and like throws a pillow over her head, so she doesn't actually see what happens. But I mean, I think you'd figure it out.
Well, yeah, he ends up
Pretty
dead like later, and it's like, whoa, did they actually do it? Like, what do you think, lady?
Yeah.
So it's confirmed for her later that they killed Jamie because that's not what Nick Cassavetes wants, right? Like that's his girl. She belongs to him or whatever.
He's essentially stalking her.
Yeah.
Right.
And she said, like, I've never made love to you, and I never will. And he's like, you will, like what?
Well, yeah, dude,
Yeah.
he's creepy all
Guy?
across the board.
Well, this, the 80s were, this isn't exactly a high school movie, but whenever there's a movie where there's like a bully, like the 80s was bullies in the 80s, like you genuinely feared for your life.
Yeah.
3 o'clock high.
For sure. 3 o'clock high. Yeah.
High,
Yeah.
Christine, like that guy's going to kill Arnie if the teacher doesn't show up in Christine. You know,
Right.
so, and also in classic 80s fashion, the bullies are always like 30. You know, so, like him like sitting in Nick Cassavetes sitting in his car is just like, this is, like that horrible scenario where like your mom is dating some really creepy guy. He seems more like you're a potential stepdad to Sherilyn Fenn than like a potential boyfriend. It's very and he's insane, but that's par for the course for that decade.
Yeah, he was like the definitive bully for me after seeing this, and every time I'd see him in whatever random things he kind of popped up in, it's like, oh, the Wraith. Yeah, nope, bad guy. Like I'll never not see him as Packard. But obviously he went on to a really successful directorial career later on, which I don't know how many people know about that, but that's really like where his success has been.
Right.
David, you're a big Notebook fan, aren't you?
I haven't seen it. But
what?
No, I never saw it.
I mean, that's his. He went the route of his dad too, right? I mean, that's kind of what his dad did.
Yeah. I saw Alpha Dog. I saw his Alpha Dog movie. It's pretty good.
Yeah. And the scene where the Wraith comes into the garage and shoots everything up. He's just destroying everything in the garage, and Packard's just standing there. Just everyone else
like mad,
freaking...
like, oh man, darn it, I'm gonna get this guy. But like, why does I mean, okay, we can get it. I mean, there's a lot of why would this be a thing, but like, why does he have like a future shotgun? It's like it's got line, it's got like lights on it.
Why not?
Like, and I think like a tube going into his body.
I don't think you can explain the tech side of whatever is happening with the Wraith. I know the director, Mike Marvin, has, put it out there what was going on with those, metal pieces of metal that are vanishing. There's a lot of weird things.
And what is that?
He
what
explained
did he
it?
say?
Yeah,
what did he explain? Please don't keep it a secret any longer.
So it's meant to symbolize that he's becoming more whole as he's eliminating each one of them. He doesn't need the metal holding his body together anymore. So after each death, he loses a piece of metal because he's getting stronger.
Do we see that throughout the movie, that like he's got a lot of metal early and then not a lot of metal at the end?
No, it's very vague. You only see, the pieces disappear after one of the explosions, but there's never dialogue that tells you what is happening with that. It's just,
oh, this metal is disappearing. I feel so much stronger.
But it seems like that's the stuff, like if he was in traction, that's the metal that he'd be in, right? But like he was dead, right? Like it's not like he was like hospitalized with all this metal.
Well, sometimes you just gotta roll with it.
Yeah. Like, did they change the story element?
This movie
later?
asks that a lot.
Yeah.
It's weird. I mean, it's like a cool idea in theory if it was consistent with any internal logic of the movie, but there isn't.
Yeah, I mean, we could nitpick. Like,
well,
what was the point of all the buildup for like the digital signal? like jammer or whatever, just so he could see the engine. That one,
Yeah,
Right.
it's like
Yep.
it's from the future.
Just that cool door that
You
opened
could see
up.
the pulsing engine. That this is not
like
Earth-like.
why would you let somebody put a thing in your engine that would let them turn your car off?
Yeah,
anytime they want it.
that was the rule. The new rule.
The new rule. Just sprung it on him. He's like, all right.
Yeah. There's a whole lot of that.
There's no payoff for it ever.
Zero.
It's just forgotten about. It
also
disappeared.
another one, the fact that as each of the gang members is killed in their respective car explosions, their bodies are whole,
but
except their eyes are gone.
Well, they're the windows to the soul, man.
Yeah.
And, that's what he's feeding on.
I thought he was raising an army or something. Like by the end, like they were all going to become
Wraiths.
Wraiths.
That's
Like,
the second movie.
Like that didn't happen.
No.
And like,
so what was it? They talk about it when yes, we have another Sheriff Loomis here in this. When Randy Quaid's talking to two of them, that they're talking about it, and then it is never addressed again.
Yeah.
No.
Well, and then when Packard dies, he just looked like, the thing is when they showed you the first body, is it Gutter Boy or whatever, and he's just like ashen white and like his eyes are out of his sockets. Like he looks, but his hair is normal, so he's not burned to a crisp.
Right.
It's
Augie.
Like Augie's the first.
Or
the
Augie,
first one.
Yeah.
And then, but then when Packard dies, he just looks like a dude. He looks like he's asleep and he's not wearing any clothes.
And his eyes are closed, so
his eyes are closed, but there's no. You wouldn't think. It's like, oh, they did it again.
Maybe he was Cassavetes just saying, "You're not doing that shit to me."
Yeah,
I'm not putting that eye shit on.
But like they should have checked. Like, is he breathing? He looks perfectly normal.
Yeah.
Like, just check.
Yeah.
I thought he lived. Like, and he was gonna be a tortured guy that like had to live forever or something.
Well,
like,
I mean, Randy Quaid's Loomis is pretty much the biggest
yeah.
sheriff I've ever seen in whatever.
Big anti-drug cop too, by the way. Just everybody, like, just everything he's doing, he keeps insulting them as though they're a bunch of drug users and druggies, and that's like,
well, I mean,
not
Skank is
totally
drinking
wrong.
motor
well,
oil
no,
right
yeah,
in
I
front of
mean,
him.
when you're doing, that's like the thing with the hydraulic fluid. It's like, this is what crazy gangs do. They do anything that gets you high. Like anything.
I feel like
they drink poison.
Skank and Gutter Boy right off the set of like Class of Nukem High, which was filming two doors down. They're like, we need some extras, and they just get these guys, the weird ones. Come on.
When you're talking about the garage scene, I don't know if you noticed, there's a little homage to The Thing in that garage scene.
No, I missed it. What
was when
what is it?
Gutter Boy goes, Skank, who was that guy? He's like, I don't know, but he was weird and pissed off. And that's straight out of The Thing about Clark says it about the dog.
Huh.
Maybe there's a link. Maybe we'll link those. Maybe this is in the same cinematic universe. The Wraith versus The Thing.
Well, you brought up Loomis, right? So Sheriff Loomis, but also there's the character named Billy in this, and they kept saying the names really close to each other, Billy Loomis, like over and over again, which constantly made me think of Scream and Skeet Ulrich's character, which is named
and
Billy
Halloween.
Loomis.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, all right, not that these are linked in any way, just coincidental, but kept taking me out of it, amongst other things.
Yeah, but all right, well, let's look at the cast a little bit more. We talked about Nick Cassavetes. Charlie Sheen obviously is about to hit the big time. It's obviously also coming from family who was big all through the 70s and into the 80s with Martin Sheen, and a legend on his own. But Charlie had I think this is kind of known as his first leading role, although that term is used very loosely here since he's in the movie for about 5 minutes. But he was in Grizzly 2. He was in Red Dawn, which we covered here and is a big time favorite of mine. And then now I think he did Lucas as well, and is really going directly after this, going right to the set of Platoon. So shooting these really almost overlapping, and that's part of why he was in so little of this movie is actually Charlie Sheen. A lot of those shots, like if you're not seeing his face, that's a double. It's not Charlie Sheen. It's some local lookalike guy.
Guys, man, the back of that head, that's me.
I'm the guy in the Wraith. I'm the Wraith. But are you guys in general fans of Charlie Sheen? I mean, he had such a huge like late 80s, early 90s, and then it kind of died down for a while and then resurrected with a huge TV career, and then he went off the deep end.
Yeah.
I was a big big Charlie Sheen fan at the time. I loved him in Platoon. I didn't see Wall Street at the time, but Major League is like the coolest. And his scene in Ferris Bueller, I thought Charlie was like one of the coolest guys at that when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would. I don't know if I'd say I was a big fan, but from Young Guns to Navy SEALs, like I was all in on Charlie Sheen.
We a couple of years ago did an episode on Navy SEALs, and I'll never not love that movie. It's so bad, it's great. I just love it. Michael Biehn, Charlie Sheen, Bill Paxton, and Rick Rossovich together, an unbeatable team. David, what were you going to say something about the machine?
Always a machine head in the 80s, also with
Hot Shots.
Oh, Hot Shots in the 90s then too. A minute when he was on Men at Work with his brother Emilio. 8 Men Out, can't beat that.
8 Men Out, yeah.
Oh, big fan.
Yeah,
big Sheen fan.
Speaking of Hot Shots, now just theorizing, is there a world where this movie ends and he becomes Topper Harley?
Yeah, it's when he got hired to do Hot Shots as Charlie Sheen.
He drives off on with the motorcycle, breaks up with Carrie somewhere along the way, and goes right to the base.
I don't know how you would link the two movies together, but Charlie Sheen certainly.
He rides a motorcycle. Both. That's it.
Well, you can really link any movies. There was a friend of mine who used to get really pissed because I used to talk about how Cliffhanger was a sequel to Harry and the Hendersons, and that's what happened to John Lithgow after he left Harry. He kind of went crazy and became evil.
That is fantastic.
And he would get mad at me because I would talk about it totally seriously. He's like, no, I'm serious. That's what the intention was.
Was that John Turner? That's why you haven't seen him in years.
No, it wasn't John Turner. John Turner just moved away, unfortunately. But I never saw the link between Hot Shots and this movie, but I'm sure there is an argument for it if we really analyze it. I also haven't seen the first Hot Shots movie since I saw it in the theater. So
wow.
Well, maybe I've seen it one time since then, but
I think
I don't know. I'm not going to catch all the Wraith references in it.
We when Top Gun Maverick came out, I did Top Gun Maverick, Hot Shots Part 2, and I love the Hot Shots movies. I think they're so great. So give it a try when you're ready for.
I don't have anything against them. I remember I was very fond of them. I was especially fond of Hot Shots Part 2. So
if you drink enough radiator fluid, you should be able to link just about anything.
Yeah. But yeah, this is Charlie right before that, and his character Jake, right? Jake is his name in this. When he's in Charlie Sheen form, he's Jake, right?
He's Jake,
yes,
yeah,
right,
yeah. Cool name for Charlie, but
Jake.
The character is so flat. Like he really doesn't have any kind of emotion. He doesn't seem like he cares too much about anything that's going on. He's just kind of going through the motions, it feels like.
And it's like it's over these course of days. Like what's he doing, by the way? Why doesn't he just come? He's got to let these guys mess some stuff up, and then he's gonna slowly kill them over a couple days, and then flirt with his old flame.
Like
And
he
then,
doesn't when he shoots up the garage. Like he
What?
just is shooting up the cars. He doesn't actually. He could kill them all right there and get his revenge and be on his way. But that's
Yeah.
not what he does.
Well, we don't. Yeah, like we don't have any idea like what's satisfying his thirst for vengeance, and then like what he really, what's he after? Like as a resurrected human who's now come to get his girl, like she gets to go with him. There's so much story. There's so much stuff going on with potential that just nothing ever comes to never amounts to like an interesting enough story. Just all these seeds are planted without satisfying any of them.
Yeah, and his brother, who
Yeah.
does not seem too broken up that his older brother has been, murdered somewhat recently. Did they say when that happened? I mean, it feels like it was within, I don't know, a
Like a
few
year?
months. Yeah,
A couple months, a year. I don't know.
everyone looks
Yeah,
the same in that
that's-
flashback. So
Fair enough.
Yeah, well, maybe he and his brother didn't really get along very well. Who knows? He's
Like, you
living in
don't
his
see
brother's
emotion in-
shadow the whole time.
yeah, he doesn't get emotional about it till the very last scene with him, where he puts it
Bro.
together that Jake and Jamie is the same.
Jake! Jamie!
Yeah.
How much time do you think is the movie takes place in?
You could probably count the nights, since something seems to happen every night, but maybe 2 weeks, maybe.
You think it's that long?
If that, no, probably less, maybe a week.
A good solid 5 to 7 days. You'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I was going to say a month, but that's only because Charlie Sheen disappears for half the movie, and I'm just like,
Well,
all
he's the
right.
Wraith, man.
No, but like, it's just
Well,
it seems like a long time.
Do you think that this is a question that I always pose when we do Saturday Night Movie sleepovers? Because now, like in hindsight, we do have a newcomer to the movie now. Like I always wonder, like, when are you supposed to know that he's the Wraith? Like when are you supposed to make that connection? Because like we just kind of know that from having seen it 1,000 years ago.
Yeah.
So maybe our newcomer might be able to answer that.
David,
question.
what do you think?
Well, I don't
when did
know.
it hit you?
I mean, I guess it was after. Well, it
After
was
he shows
ruined.
up.
It was ruined because I knew he played the Wraith. So,
Yeah,
but then
like,
it's
I
just
wonder,
him.
like, if you hadn't seen it, you're just judging by the poster, and you walked into that movie, or you rented the tape, and you popped it in. Like, when is it that?
Oh, yeah.
When does it click that he? Like, when I watch like Silver Bullet, I'm always like, when are you supposed to know that the spoiler alert for Silver Bullet, non-familiar, that you're supposed to know that the Reverend is the werewolf? Like,
Yeah.
Well, like
'cause, like,
Packard.
I always just kind of knew that because I saw it when I was a kid.
Right.
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't
like
know.
in
I
the
feel
mo-
like it's kind of immediate in this one.
Yeah, it's like you wouldn't be wrong to guess that. Oh,
Like, he's the
that's-
new guy, and then there's this Wraith.
Well, because the opening
Yeah.
scene is like the lights coming down, right? The lights blasting through Sheriff Loomis's poster and into the town, and then I think the next scene is him, or maybe it's I can't remember if it's the first, like, where the gang takes that car, does their first race,
Yeah.
and they take that
Oh,
guy's
yeah.
car, but then it's the next day you see Charlie Sheen riding into town with a very cool jean jacket and no shirt on underneath.
Dude, Carrie
Yeah.
has some questionable
Wraith
decision-making
style.
skills.
Wraith style.
Like, she can't get rid of Packard, and also this dude rolls up in his motorcycle.
He's like, I'll show
She
you where it
doesn't-
is.
She doesn't know anything about him. She's like, yeah, let's jump on the motorbike. Let's go.
Yeah.
What's
So,
going
David,
on?
did you think, like, right there, as soon as you see Charlie Sheen, did you assume that he's the Wraith?
I assumed he was the Wraith, but I was like, I didn't know if he was the Wraith yet.
He
Thing
might
like,
become the Wraith.
did he have to become the Wraith? So
Like, is there a big transformation? Like, is there
Yeah.
like a Teen Wolf scene where
Like
he
he got struck by lightning and then became the Wraith.
or
Yeah.
does he die and then get
And then
become a
become
ghost?
I think
I mean, I think
when I was a kid, just coming back to me now, I think I thought that was what happened, was that Charlie Sheen, Jake, was like a separate person, that the Wraith, the light like hit him and took over him, and Jamie sort of possessed him.
I feel like if you make this movie not a flashback, and like it starts with the romantic night of Charlie Sheen as Jamie or Jake, whoever you want it to be, and Carrie off in the mountain, and then he goes and gets killed, and then the Wraith comes back, and you never see his face again. It's just this thing until the very end, and you reveal that he's come back, and he's. But like, I think part of the issue is like, why are Jamie and Jake the same person? Like, what's like? I get confused with that. I get confused like. The timeline's weird because it looks like it happens the day before or 3 weeks before, or maybe it's 4 years before, but it doesn't really clarify. So
why come back as Jake at all? Why not just come as the Wraith with the helmet and everything? And
that's what I'm saying. Like, or like, what's the point of having the Jake character? Aside from the fact that you've got Charlie Sheen to play Jake, right?
Yep.
Then why not just lose that whole flashback part and just have, because you only have obviously like 2 days of shooting time with Charlie Sheen because of his schedule.
Yeah.
Like, just change it so that you have him all up front and at the end, and then you just have this dude in a mask going around
kind of
killing him. It is, but they add all this other stuff in.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think if you go by my theory that he's not necessarily there to avenge his death, but also, and maybe equally or more so, there to make sure that his brother and Sherilyn Fenn character are okay, that he would interact with them somehow.
So, in that theory, he needs to be there for the interaction to see that. You couldn't, without the interaction, I mean, he couldn't
be like
make that a
present rate,
right?
But...
Like he's setting, he's got to be Charlie Sheen to interact, like have that a person to person interaction with them.
Yeah,
because he's going to leave. Well, I mean, he leaves his brother with the car, so that's his gift to him, I guess, and going to make him successful. Yeah.
He's just going to Starman beam up, and he'll be fine.
And then he takes off with Carrie. Where are they going?
Yeah,
to the stars, man.
Yeah,
I don't know.
To the Air Force Base.
Exactly. to Hot Shots.
Well, and I wasn't even clear that like he's the Wraith, right? But I didn't know if he wasn't fully the car when he was. You never see a driver in the car. Like, I thought he was just the car. Like,
which kind of would have been much
Christine,
cooler in some ways.
Well, but Packard figures it all out. Like, as soon as it makes sense. Oh, well, there's this new guy, and then here's the guy challenging us. That's the same guy. Like if you didn't know it by the time Packard knew it, now you know. Like, they're absolutely the same character. Or whatever, supposedly. I mean, again, it could have been a misdirect if it was written differently. But like, you're supposed to believe that the new guy in town is also the new terrorist in town.
Well, you know who doesn't put that together? Randy Quaid.
Randy Quaid just can't do it. He
has no idea what's happening.
He's too focused on catching those kids and their wacky tobacco.
Yeah, and cutting those paper figures out that he was doing.
Yeah.
He's kind of playing catch up the whole time and doesn't save anybody from anything in the entire movie. Apparently there was a lot more to specifically his character, but there was a lot of other scenes that were written and scripted and were intended to be shot, and there was some kind of conflict with the studio, and they ran out of funds, and it was like, well, now you're just not shooting all those scenes. So I think that's where Randy Quaid's character really got kind of toned down and left in like a bit of a question mark of why do we even have this person? He's also, I think, the only adult that we see in the whole movie.
Well, there's the guy at the airplane graveyard. and then there's like his deputy.
Right. Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
But yeah, it might have been more effective. I mean, it would have like added to the weirdness of it, which might not have been a bad thing. But like one of those, like a lot of horror movies just like take place in a world where there's just like no grown-ups.
Yeah.
They're always like just off somewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, it certainly wouldn't have hurt the movie to have a scenario where there just was like this weird town where there's no adults.
like Jake's brother runs the burger place, right? And he's 15, 16, but it seems like he's doing everything. Like he's the cook and he's closing it down at night. And I don't know.
That's what you did in the 80s, though. You'd leave teenagers in charge of your shops.
That's true.
Yep.
That's true.
That's true.
I closed down Suncoast Video many a time.
Teenagers were given a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
So,
Sherilyn Fenn.
Here she is again.
Here she is. Welcome to the show. I'm a huge Twin Peaks fan, so I love seeing her whenever she pops up. I did not remember that she was the actress in this movie until watching it this time. And she looks, so different than Audrey Horne in Twin Peaks. It was a pleasant surprise. And she was dating Johnny Depp this whole time, who was apparently in her trailer like every day she was shooting. He was just chilling in the trailer back there. So
he was Charlie Sheen anytime his back was turned.
Was he?
Yeah, in the
might as well have been.
I'm totally
stop it.
He should have been. I mean, it would have been interesting if because he also would go off to go do Platoon as well. He's in it with Charlie. Would have been interesting if he had played Jake. Who knows what would have happened?
Well, she's in because I'm as people who listen to Saturday Night Movie Sleepovers, I'm contractually obligated to mention 21 Jump Street in every podcast.
Yeah,
and she is in a great episode of 21 Jump Street opposite Depp.
Nice. What season?
Yeah, is that where they met, or it's
got to be one or two?
They already met.
No, well, I mean, I don't think the show starts until like 87. So they must have already either broken up or had been together at the time. I think it's pretty early. It's one of the, for people who know 21 Jump Street, Johnny Depp's character and Peter DeLuise's character, who does have a kind of a striking resemblance to Nick Cassavetes' character in this movie.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
They often go undercover and they play these brothers called the McQuaid brothers, I think. And it's one of the McQuaid brothers episodes, and she wants to hire, they're like crazy bullies in school, although they don't actually bully anybody, but they're like these crazy guys in school. Is their cover. And so they have this reputation of that, like, everybody's like, oh, those guys killed somebody or whatever, and that's why they just entered our school. And so she tries to she tries to hire Johnny Depp and her brother and Peter DeLuise to like kill somebody, like her dad or something, who's like sexually abusing her or some shit. It's pretty intense, but I would imagine it's pretty early into it's only 5 seasons long, and Depp leaves after the 4th season, and he's pretty checked out by season 4 anyway. He's phoning it in for that last season anyway.
What was he doing? What was he doing at the time? Crybaby? Is that 89, 90?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know Edward Scissorhands might have been.
Yeah, maybe shooting
that.
Yeah.
Crybaby. He must have. He probably did Crybaby during.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna guess during 21 Jump Street, and then when he left 21 Jump Street, he probably did Edward Scissorhands right away.
And was he replaced by Booker? Did Booker come in to replace?
That's the common misconception. We don't need to go down this 21 Jump Street tangent, but
we're just taking a sidebar for a second. Bear with us.
They coexist, actually. I think he comes in. I'm going to say Booker comes in season 3.
Aren't they in a big cocaine episode? Doesn't he like struggle with cocaine? And
there is definitely. I mean, there's a lot of cocaine episodes. I'm trying to think which one.
It was the 80s.
Ends up with an addiction, but he's kind of an antagonist at first. He's like the new guy, and and then they kind of coexist, and then he might even leave before Depp leaves to go do the show Booker,
yeah,
the spinoff show.
We got to cover If Looks Could Kill some point here on the show.
That was his big movie break.
That was
right?
a huge movie that
I saw
Wasn't
that
he
one
also
in
in?
theaters.
He's he like what's that movie? He's in a movie with it's like mobsters. It's like him,
Mobsters.
Christian Slater,
and Patrick Dempsey and
Dempsey.
Costas Mandylor, I think is his name. Yeah.
This is
I
Grieco?
forgot all about that.
Grieco, yeah.
Yeah, Richard Grieco.
All right.
Anyway,
so I'm just saying Sherilyn Fenn and Johnny Depp were.
Yeah, they dated for years, I think, and then I don't know if he, broke up with her and went right into his relationship with Winona Ryder, but somewhere around there. But they were together up until Twin Peaks, so all in that '89 kind of zone. But yeah, her character Carrie, she also doesn't seem hugely broken up about the entire Jamie murder. Jake's here now. She's pretty like happy-go-lucky when she's not around Packard.
Right.
Yeah. So this movie doesn't have any good sense of timing or pace, like to pace anything out. Like nothing makes sense in a lot of ways if you think about it too hard. So it's like it doesn't try hard enough to be a little weird and surreal, and it doesn't try hard enough to sort of ground it in any kind of reality that makes sense for emotional, genuine, genuine emotion. So it's a little, and then it's got a whole mess of ideas in terms of like sci-fi supernatural spirits of vengeance and revenge and murder and true love and grown up young in the 80s. I would put it that everyone's post high school, but I'm like, boy, are these are they in high school? Like, are they supposed to go to class soon? I'm like, they're so old. Like, there's no way. Like, they must be, just post high school youths.
Yeah.
Just having a good time.
Still living in town.
I feel like there's another hour of movie just sitting on the cutting room floor, and the whole thing would just be a chaotic mess if we had all that footage.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Yeah, I mean, kind of, it's the weirdness of the movie is that it never fully commits to being weird.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
that's right.
And it makes its own like unique weirdness out of that. And yeah, it's a very look. The performances are interesting. Let's just put it that way. Like the lack of emotion, like you said, or the absolute like other end of the spectrum of like just crazy over the topness.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does seem like Charlie Sheen didn't want to be there.
He sure found his way out. I mean, I think they did shoot his scenes in like 2 or 3 days. I mean, he really was barely there.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's amazing what a contract, gets you into. It's like we'll make this movie, but I'm out. I gotta go. I gotta do Platoon.
Yeah. On the DVD, Mike Marvin says they shot all of his scenes in 1 day. I don't think that's possible. That's bearing like the locations that they're in, and I don't think you could do that. But because then it would be a lot of the movie got shot in 1 day, But
yeah, it's a lot of pages.
Yeah. But Mike Marvin, I don't know really what he did. I think he directed some TV after this, but he had written Hot Dog the movie and directed Hamburger the motion picture coming into this one. So his first non-food related project.
French Fries the movie just never got off the ground, unfortunately.
It's meant to be a trilogy.
Yeah. I remember Hamburger the movie, like the poster being up in my video store, Movies One, in Peekskill, New York.
Really? I've never even.
I just remember the poster because it was one of those like it was hand drawn thing, and I was like that style. But I'm like, what is that? And it had the little boxes at the bottom of the poster with all the actors in it, and it's like 30 people, most of which I didn't know who they were. But
is this like another sex comedy?
You grew up not far away from where I grew up then.
Yeah, I think we did grow up right in the
Albany,
same
the Albany area.
Yeah.
Hamburger, that was like a meatballs kind of movie, raunchy sex
yeah, I
comedy?
think they're the early 80s like sex comedies.
Well, apparently he got his start like shooting ski footage, right?
Yes,
and
yeah.
then
Yeah,
he's the
he
one
did
that
that.
filmed the ski
Better Off Dead.
the ski sequence in the Bond. What's the Roger?
Yeah, it was
Moore
The Spy Who
movie?
Loved
License
Me,
to
right?
Kill. Oh,
No, not License to Kill. I think it was The Spy Who Loved Me, that opening, ski chase.
Yeah,
That's got that like legendary jump, the stunt at the end of it that goes right into the title sequence.
and that's how
Yeah.
he got into Hollywood.
Yeah.
Doing that. So
Yep,
of course,
yep.
the next logical step was the Wraith.
One hot dog and hamburger later, you get the Wraith. And Hollywood was like, "What? What are we doing here?"
Well, this is one of those
Who let
movies
this guy in?
I mean, maybe part of the reason why it never goes fully dramatic and emotional is because, like, clearly, I mean, you got to look at like who were they really aiming this movie at? Like, I mean, it has to be like a young teenage audience, and I'm gonna give some credit to 21 Jump Street, but like, not a lot of movies went that way and darker stories, media until 21 Jump Street that went pretty serious, where they decided to make a very serious show geared towards young people and like not pull any punches. But that was not the norm. I mean, aside from, you could argue things like Christine are pretty serious, but horror movies are kind of different. And though this has obviously horror movie elements because of some kind of supernatural thing going on, it does seem like maybe the decision to not ever go with like the tragedy of what's actually has happened in this storyline, or what is happening, and just kind of glaze over it, or the actors just didn't get any direction. I mean, it could could go either way.
Yeah, I think that might be likely.
It's probably a combination of things, but it does seem like, based on the version that we see, that we've seen and exists out there, that the actors are going in different directions and not everyone's on the same page creatively about what the tone is here.
Everyone's a little bit like, they're all a bunch of weirdos and stuff, so they all play the weirdo-ness way up. Like, it's just turned, and it doesn't get pulled back a little. And then Charlie Sheen is just sort of there and kind of charmlessly walks through a scene.
It feels like he's waiting for his director to tell him what to do, to tell him how to play it. He's just going to play it flat. And against Carrie, Sherilyn Fenn's kind of bubbly, like she's really in love with him and smiling the whole time. And then you have Packard's like just mean bad guy, and then his gang is way over the top, each of them. So it's like someone's got to balance that out and find that level that they all should be at.
Yeah, looks like they all had fun doing it.
And reportedly they did. Aside from the fact that somebody died while making the movie.
Oh, someone died?
Yeah, I during one of the car chases, a camera car, I think, rolled over and I think went down a hill, and a bunch of people were hurt, but one of the camera operators died there.
Yeah, that was Bruce Ingstrom, right? That's
Ingram,
Ingram. Yeah, they dedicated
that
movie to him.
Yeah, Buddy Joe Hooker was the stunt coordinator and did all the major stunt driving, and he's like a legendary stunt driver and or just stunt performer. And they were off doing they were away from the main production, and again, no cell phones, and in that kind of area, like walkies are only going to get a certain range. So he and the stunt team ended up doing really jumped into medic mode, and they were took care of the crew that was all injured, and then they couldn't find the person who ended up dying because I think he got tossed. But yeah, it was not it was a very tragic situation, but and I think they dedicated the movie to him.
They did. Yeah.
Apparently it's one of the reasons why the director didn't really do a whole lot after this for a few years.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess, the 80s, also with Twilight Zone and the disaster on that, it's like
Yeah.
the directors, maybe we're starting to get out of control. And it's amazing though that the directors of the 70s like didn't have more with the crazy stuff that was going on with them. There wasn't more accidents there, but yeah, now we've got all those accidents and things that happened led to all the strict safety stuff that we have today.
But accidents still happen.
They do. Randy Quaid, just going back to him, I totally forgot that he was on Saturday Night Live at this time. That bizarro season of Saturday Night Live with him, Robert Downey Jr., Anthony and Michael Hall, like all in the main cast. Joan Cusack, I think, and the 85-86 season is very strange and kind of unlike any of the others.
He's got a certain talent that he brings to things.
Yeah, but those guys are like they can be funny, but they're not comedians.
Right.
Yeah. They're comedic.
Yeah.
Well, Joan Cusack.
They can do comedy. Yeah, but there's a difference.
Randy Quaid, funny.
Yeah.
They're all caricatures of humans. That's their shtick.
So Mike Marvin claims that he's ready to do a sequel to The Wraith, that he has 3 different scripts written, all sequels to this movie.
It's the sequel everybody's been asking for, Mike.
A direct sequel to this storyline.
Yes.
With 3 different scripts.
You could get Charlie Sheen.
He's got options. You probably could get Charlie Sheen.
You could get everybody back, right?
I think so.
Except Cassavetes, maybe.
Because Clint Howard...
Oh, he's dead.
Well, Nick Cassavetes is still alive.
No, his character's dead.
Oh, yeah.
Packard's dead.
They could all come back as Wraiths.
That's a good point.
Wraith, exactly.
A Wraith versus Wraith.
They're all Wraiths. They all have weird bodies that didn't burn up.
Well, that would be an interesting story that Cassavetes' character comes back as a Wraith to get revenge on Charlie Sheen.
War Wraith.
World War Wraith.
Now Packard's the good guy and flip it. We got that emotion from Packard when he's crying and watching, them get on the motorcycle together. And so we know he's got the range.
Yeah, I like how they try to make it seem like he's hidden by, putting some like brush in front of the camera. But it is like, in movies, it's always like you don't see like the only Corvette in town parked across the street.
Right across the street.
Yeah.
And if he's hidden, like where is he parked? It's like parked in the bushes.
Yeah. And then we get like the same shot at the end of the movie where Randy Quaid's then watching the two of them together, and I'm waiting for that tear to come down his face. And what would that mean? But yeah, I don't know. Well, maybe we'll get Wraith 2.0. Maybe it's going to happen. It's Clint Howard, by the way, who's amazing in this movie in all his Clint Howard.
Dude, his hair is on point.
Yeah,
in this movie,
and it was a wig too.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
kind of hurts my feelings a little bit.
Apparently, he was going quite bald by this point.
Yeah,
I knew he was heading that direction. I thought we had gotten ahead of it in this movie, and I was like, "Oh, how glorious!"
But Clint Howard had been acting by this point for like 20 years.
Yeah,
like he was on episode 3, I think, of Star Trek. One of the first ones.
Clint and his brother have been around.
They've been in the business
in Hollywood
since black and white TV.
Yeah.
Yep. And still going strong.
Nepotism. You got Charlie Sheen. You got the Cassavetes. You got Clint Howard.
Oh yeah.
It's all. I mean, I don't know. But I guess Randy Quaid probably came before Dennis Quaid, but still, it's
yeah, just a little bit. Yep. Yeah, but
relatives of stars, the movie.
Yeah. Hollywood royalty here all throughout the film. The Wraith has everything. including an amazing soundtrack, by the way. Like, this soundtrack is fantastic, and it does not stop through it's like almost the whole movie. You've got like pretty, and it's not like throwaway songs either. It's like Rebel Yell from Billy Idol's in this, and there's a whole bunch of you got Motley Crue, you got Ozzy Osbourne and Robert Palmer, and like big names with at least maybe not their top songs, but recognizable songs all through this.
Oh, I mean, was it Addicted to Love? I mean, that was a pretty big hit.
Yeah, I guess that was it. Yeah.
Other than maybe Simply Irresistible, it's probably Palmer's biggest hit.
Yeah, for sure. But
and Rebel Yell was pretty big too.
Rebel Yell was huge.
Yeah. So
I think that was the first Billy Idol song that I was like, I was really into.
Yeah, well, that's obviously didn't start in the 80s, but it seemed like 80s into the 90s, it became like the whole new art form of the soundtrack album.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's make more money off of this thing.
Yeah.
Releasing an album. Let's really milk it for everything it's worth.
The soundtrack knows how to rock.
That's your quote on the CD.
Back of the hoodie.
Knows how to rock.
Bonnie Tyler, like you said, Stan Bush.
Yeah, Stan Bush. Now, come on.
The soundtrack king.
Yeah, I mean, Stan Bush is one of the best. How often does he go on? Doesn't he go on tour or do concerts like every so often?
I'm sure he must.
Yeah. I think he did something in LA a few years ago where he like went into like the Transformers, his songs from the Transformers, the movie, and people went nuts.
I went to go see at the Whiskey. I went to go see Vince DiCola, who did the score for Transformers, the movie, and Rocky IV, and Stan Bush wasn't there, but they played that stuff.
Yeah, they all go together.
Else come out, and it was awesome. I'm not gonna lie, when he closed with a couple of tracks from from Rocky IV. I'm not gonna lie, I got emotional. I got a little teary.
How can you not? It's like the series, like every Rocky movie has such an amazing emotional soundtrack and score. So should we see how this fared at the box office and do a little box office glory?
Oh yeah.
All right. The Wraith is released on November 21st, 1986. It had a $3 million-ish budget. There was Mike Marvin had said that the budget that he signed was a different dollar amount than the budget they actually kind of worked with on the movie, and there was maybe some shenanigans going on, but somewhere around 3 million. So it came out November 21st. It opened at number 8, going up against An American Tail and Chuck Norris's Firewalker.
Ooh.
So not a good start.
And clearly they thought Thanksgiving time release, all the family's going to get together next Thursday, and they're going to go see The Wraith.
It's going to pack
a 4-quadrant movie.
Yeah,
something for everybody.
Did not happen. It was sandwiched right between Soul Man, which is a movie we can't talk about anymore, in week 5, and Stand By Me, which was week 16.
I saw Soul Man at the theater.
Did you really?
Yes, I did.
I remember seeing Stand By Me at the theater.
I didn't, but I've seen it so much more than Soul Man since then. No.
I was talking to my brother, and I was like, "Remember when we saw Stand By Me?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Dad cried."
Wow.
Through the whole thing.
Yeah.
The whole thing.
I think like our grandfather, his dad had just died recently, and I didn't remember that as a kid, but he remembered that, and this was a recent conversation. That's why, it's kind of fresh for it.
Well, I mean, there's definitely Stand By Me is, a great movie, and
Yeah.
can certainly see that striking some nerves in people, who grew up with a group of friends like that and had situations like that. Number one at the box office was Crocodile Dundee, which I did see in the theater.
Same.
Week 9. Crocodile Dundee, another movie we'll have to take a look at some point.
Did you say you saw Crocodile Dundee in the theater on week 9?
Well, no, it was week 9. This week was week 9. But
Oh, okay.
I remember
I
it
don't
was
know
the
what week.
ninth
How do you know that you were there on week 9, John?
Maybe I was.
That
Might
is
have been.
that's insane. That
I remember people, the theater being populated. So who knows?
yeah.
Okay, so it did opening weekend. It racked up 1.4 million, and worldwide it ended up with 3.5. So it is a
Cha-ching.
sad failure at the box office. Probably needed to clear 6 between ads and whatnot. But it is not in the. I looked up the top. What I saw was the top 70 for 1986. It did not make it into that zone.
Pretty sure it was 71.
Maybe it was 71.
Well, I don't think it opened on a ton of screens. And according to Mike Marvin, there was something wrong with the audio track on the print, and that you couldn't really hear what was going on. I don't know how that would affect box office unless everybody who saw it that first week was like, don't go see that. It sounds like shit.
The mix is
weird
awful.
sound check.
I'm pretty sure even if you could hear everything, you still wouldn't know what was going on in the movie. So
You're still come away with what happened?
what just happened? That car was cool.
Yeah. Top of the box office in 86, Top Gun, Crocodile Dundee, and Aliens. So the Wraith comparable to those.
And and then you said it would get a cult following through home video and I'm assuming rentals and stuff. I like with all the music that's in this movie and stuff, it's rentable. I could rent it on streaming on different platforms and stuff like that. But we still can't get Cocoon, as we keep talking about. But it's like there's a lot of musicians on the soundtrack.
Yeah, I wonder what that is. Like, I can't, this wasn't a major studio picture either. So I don't know what the music licensing was, but it would, I don't know. It's one of those, it surprises me that they hadn't pulled those, who knows? Or maybe they got renegotiated.
Or maybe there's blocks of artists in certain times in all the movies they were ever in. Maybe there's a blanket thing that covers them. And
maybe all the artists. Maybe all the artists were like, "Don't you dare pull my song from this movie."
Yeah,
I'm Team Wraith all the way.
Maybe there's not enough people watching this movie,
or that.
No, sorry, I'm bagging on it too hard. This movie's not that bad.
It's not. It really isn't. It's so. I mean, coming back around on it, it's not that bad of a movie. It's just a movie that is a mix of a lot of different things and never really decided exactly what it wanted to be. It's had they kind of leveled the tones in both the performances and the general style of the movie, it could have been really, really cool. Instead of a low to mid-level cult following, it could have been a success.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I honestly, I know I've been kind of tanking on it the entire episode, but I do think that this could be a really cool movie, but unfortunately it just seems what ended up happening is it was just kind of lazy. It seems like lazy performances, lazy writing in a lot of ways. And it just doesn't, in the 80s, when I saw it, I was confused because I didn't understand really what it was about, but I was entertained still by the car and by kind of the uniqueness of it. But after a rewatch, it was kind of it didn't hold up much. But I do think that it's got a lot of those great elements that could have made it a really cool movie.
I think it is a cool movie, and I'm not going to say that it's a great movie.
Yeah,
and I will fully admit or be on agree with all the kind of the mistakes or the things that don't work about it that we talked about. But I think it's watchable. And I think it's, like it's enjoyable and it's kind of in its own right. And at the end of the day, that's all it really needs to do. And probably all it really aspired to do. Like, it's watchable. It's very watchable.
There's, so many worse movies out there. It's not shot badly at all. Like visually, it looks good. The effects are pretty good for the time. And yeah, it's
like, I'm not going to watch it again tomorrow, but
yeah. Or will you?
Maybe next week.
But it's a good, like, every 10 years revisit the Wraith and kind of but it's not great, but so few movies really are.
What's great anymore?
Yeah, that's fair.
Just
the
like,
weirdness.
Just watch what you like.
Well, the thing's great every time.
Has a great.
That's great. But the weirdness and the kind of quirkiness or the bizarreness of it is kind of what makes it fun to watch. I think it just doesn't satisfy. Like, if it got a little weirder or got a little more, like, for sure.
That's the lacking part. Like, I love that there's like just a smattering of things smashed against the wall to see what sticks, but then there's such little follow through.
Yeah, like it doesn't live up to its potential. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But I think I'd watch it. I think I'd watch it as a what could have been kind of thing. But yeah.
Well, we'll have to review these 3 scripts and see which one is going
to
work.
It's funny. We've got Mike Marvin.
If the sequel comes out, I'll still go see the sequel, though.
It's just this. It's super. Obviously, everything we talked about, it's super derivative of like a million things. It's obviously it's derivative of High Plains Drifter, but yet like kind of a precursor to The Crow in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Sure.
But at the same time as like being so derivative, it somehow manages to, for me anyway, feel unique. The fact that it is really just a combination of a million things, but the way it's executed and maybe that recipe of all those ingredients, feels familiar. Feels like we've been here before, but there is something for me that feels like unique about it. And it's like it's the weird tone, and it's like the futuristic car and the weird like Giger like space suit.
Yeah.
And it's like it's kind of like a beautiful mess in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
That's fair. And I think the best, I think everybody should see it. Obviously there's differing opinions on it, but I think everybody should see it and come to their own conclusions. I totally get why someone would like it and why it's entertaining, for sure. I just, for me, I feel like it, again, maybe entertaining, but could have been. It's interesting enough that I'm disappointed it's not better, I guess is
get that.
Is my takeaway.
I'm gonna need to take a poll on anyone. Like, what kind of like 80s movies do you like? Because I need to, if I don't know what, I wouldn't recommend this to someone unless I can tell based on their other, predilections. Then you should probably watch this. You'd like this.
Yeah, I would never tell someone that they shouldn't watch a movie, but I don't know if I would recommend it unless somebody was like, I'm way into 80s car movies.
Then it's a must.
Yeah.
If this fits
an awesome soundtrack.
Yeah.
Like, well, have you seen this one?
I like vengeance movies that don't make any sense. Ooh, I've got one.
I've got the perfect one for you. The unanswered questions make this, just bizarrely fascinating. And, I think for those of us that discovered it in the 80s, it's kind of something that's always going to be there in our memories. But I'm excited about the Wraith too. I think I want to make this happen. So we'll, TOO, of course.
Is it? Yeah, of course. Is it 3 scripts for a sequel, or is it 3 sequels?
I think it is.
Has he envisioned like
versions.
a 4 picture?
It's like it's
like
like Avatar. After Avatar gets done with their 8 sequels.
I think it's 3 separate sequels. Each is a sequel. They're not like a series. It doesn't become a series, but maybe
like
it could.
3 versions of the next movie.
Yeah. Wasn't Knight Rider's plot kind of similar? Didn't Michael Knight?
Did he die?
Yeah,
he didn't die, but he had plastic surgery.
Right, he got beat up or something, right? Or I can't remember what the full backstory, but it was something where new name, new face, looking like Hasselhoff as you do at post surgery.
That's a hell of a plastic surgeon.
Yeah. And then, but I don't remember if it was a quest for revenge or
I don't think so. I don't know how he got hired by the Knight Foundation. I don't remember why he was qualified for it. It was like kind of like a Remo Williams type situation.
Oh, another movie. Yeah, same thing. Another face.
Just recruited him and gave him a new face,
or just shaved his mustache, right?
Took the prosthetics off his nose,
right?
Remo Williams needs to happen.
Yeah, for sure. Blake's covered it on Saturday Night Movie Sleepovers. One of the
first season.
It was very early days. Yeah.
Oh, I'll have to go.
But it's
back into the archives and pull it out, man.
Yeah.
I love that
read
movie.
all about the score and Scored to Death 2. More conversations.
Oh,
with some of Horror's greatest
and I love that
movie, but I do interview Craig Saffin, and we talk a lot about that and Last Starfighter.
Nice. That I remember I had the trailer for Remo Williams was on one of the Betamax tapes that I had that I watched over and over. I can't remember what movie it was, but it was on like one of the commercial breaks, and that that theme was like awesome. That's such an awesome track.
Yeah, that score is awesome. And another movie that is not really kosher by today's standards.
Yeah.
Remo Williams isn't.
It's Joel Grey. And, yeah.
Joel Grey plays an Asian man.
Yeah.
With great prosthetics, and somebody was nominated. I don't know if it was him or he might even have been nominated.
I think he was nominated. Yeah. Oh, this is incredible. All right. We're gonna have to
the list.
Bump that one up.
2025.
Yeah. We're gonna do a double feature: Soul Man and Remo Williams.
Remo Williams. The adventure begins and ends. All right.
I was so bummed that I never came out with a sequel for that.
I know. Well, there's a whole book series, but that's a conversation for another day.
Yeah.
But I was super excited that we all got together, and Blake, thank you for coming on for the Wraith. It's always great to have you here. I think we're going to try to get you back, later this year. We got to finalize our lineup, but the door's always open.
I was genuinely disappointed that I wasn't here for Rocky 3.
We'll make that up. We'll make that up to you.
I was a little hurt, to be honest with you, but Wraith is a good substitute, I guess.
Okay. All right. So let's check out Scored to Death. What's the next step? When can people start? What's the next thing they can do to help out with Scored to Death?
Well, I guess just follow on social media. I just this week I put a little teaser for the album, a little snippet of one of the tracks, and that's kind of where I've been posting stuff about the movie and the upcoming album, which is in the process of we're just finishing up the master of the record, and then that's going to go off to get pressed on vinyl and CD.
Nice.
But it's a very cool compilation. Steve Moore, the band Voyager 3, Alan Howarth, Wojciech Golchevsky, it's a bunch of really great and generous artists got together to support Scored to Death by recording some tracks for it free out of the goodness of their heart because they want to see the movie get made. And so when I eventually have copies, like I said, I'll make those available for people that are interested in that. It sounds great so far. It's like kind of more excited about that than I am the movie, to be honest with you. but we're in the home stretch before we have to get that pressed. But the process to get vinyl pressed could take up to a year. So
wow,
it's because you got to get in line.
Yeah.
But there's that the movie stuff, as stuff continues to happen, I'm sure I'll throw up kind of updates and maybe little snippets of interviews and stuff. But that's kind of really all people can do at the moment is at Score to Death on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and stay tuned to Score to Death Radio, and occasionally check out Saturday Night Movie Sleepovers. We have years and hundreds of episodes in a back catalog.
And you just dropped a new one a few weeks ago, right?
We did just got together and chatted.
Yeah.
And kind of made some recommendations of some of the stuff we've been watching.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Lately.
Yep.
But we're doing an episode proper that we're hoping to record next week. Potentially, I think now that we don't do the show very often, like the pressure as to what we're going to choose to do has kind of increased. Because I feel like we either have to do something really big or something very strange. That like people are like, that's a weird one. You can't just do something in the middle. But we have something come from the early '90s that I think a lot of people are going to be into, unless we have an epiphany and come up with something better.
All right, we're looking forward to that My Cousin Vinny episode.
I pushed. I've in the past I've pushed for My Cousin Vinny. It's on the list.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll stay in tune for that next episode. Looking forward to that, and we'll follow everything that happens with Score to Death. So very excited to see how that progresses. And if you want to check us out, you can check us out at ReconCinemation Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Check out the archives at ReconCinemation.com. Give us a rating and a review. It always helps the show. Quick shout out, thank you to some of our other friends, E.K. Wimmer for the theme music and Curtis Moore for the poster. And stay tuned for our next episode. We're going to be going back to the 90s ourselves with a look at The Shadow. So I loved it when it came out. We'll see how we feel about it now. I was in the minority then.
We did that a few years ago. It's an interesting revisit.
Yeah.
Jerry Goldsmith did the score.
Yeah, I mean that part is a win for sure, but it's all the rest. So we'll see. But again, Blake, thank you for coming on. We very much look forward to you coming back next time, which we'll figure out.
Always.
And we will see you guys next time on ReconCinemation.
Take care.
Bye now.
David, your mustache is back.
It's back.
It's always been this way.
It's always been here.
Some have said it's never gone anywhere.
do that again.